Namaskaram. Hello and welcome to episode number 8 of Ask Abhijit. I'm your host Sree Iyer. As always, Abhijit Iyer-Mitra, Abhijit Iyer-Mitra, Bongo Bandhu, Bengal's Mitra or friend is here to entertain us and also give us his gyan on who he thinks is going to win in Bengal and then Tamil Nadu. Let's start with Bengal. How are things going, Abhijit?
I'm I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm also a bit scared. And I'll tell you why. You remember in the first round, in Bengal, the voter percentage was 83%. This time it's down to 79.5, which means there's some kind of a 3% loss of enthusiasm, number one. Number two, the way these seats were divided, you look at the Bengal Assembly, it's 294. Out of this, let's just say 290. Out of this, 100 in the east, 100 in the west, and Calcutta accounts for about 90 seats. Now, what I'm seeing is in the west, that's the Bihar bordering area, the BJP will win, say, 80, 90 seats out of those 100. In the east, out of the 100, BJP will win 80, 90 seats. My problem is Kolkata. And in Kolkata, the problem is I didn't see any anger, number one. People tend to confuse saying Jai Shri Ram with anger against Mamta. That is not the case. Remember that. Being a Bengali, I can tell you, Bengalis tend to, have a very poor opinion of authority and like to stick it up to authority whenever they can. So when every time a TMC rally used to pass, they'd start shouting Jai Shri Ram at it. And of course, they'd run away when people came to beat them up for shouting Jai Shri Ram. But the problem is, where I was staying, I'd come out again and I'd see the same folks and ask them like, what, are you voting against the TMC? They'd be like, no, we're voting for the TMC. So why did you say it? Just essay. Now, to be fair, this is in a very narrow part that I saw it, around about where I was staying. But even when I went around, I wasn't seeing anger. Anger is very important in changing the current dispensation. In 2019, during the general election, what happened was, it was about Modi. It was the Modi magic. It was the Modi wave. It wasn't about Mamta. This time it's Mamta versus who exactly? They don't know. Modi versus Mamta doesn't work in this case because, it's not a central election. The third issue is that in Kolkata, everything's very, very localized. The politics are extremely local. It's all based on your local thugs and local clubs, what are called the padas and things like that. And, the BJP has parachuted in a lot of people from Delhi who I don't think are particularly helping, because it alienates. I met a lot of people who felt alienated because their seats had been given away to quote unquote interlopers from Delhi. Now, my heart is hoping that the BJP wins a huge majority. What I'm seeing, though, is on the ground, what I saw, though, to be fair, on the ground was something different. Now, to be fair, when Mamta announced that she was going to contest from Nandigram, that was seen very much as a panic reaction. But the BJP candidate list announcement comes after that. So, it could, I don't know, between panic reaction and clumsiness with the list, you might have just balanced each other out. I'm hoping, I will be praying for a BJP win, but if you don't take my heart into account, I'm very, very cautious about where this is heading.
So it could go either way, is what you think?
I suspect the TMC might get it hung, but TMC may end up the biggest party. And Of course, I'm saying this in a very calculated way because I got the 2020 American elections wrong, and I got the 2019 Indian general elections wrong. So I'm kind of hoping I'll be wrong this time as well.
Oh, okay. So you're hoping to do a hat trick, but for a good outcome.
Well, yeah. So the in-between outcome, the American elections went horribly wrong. But yeah, this one I'm kind of hoping if I say one thing, the other thing will happen.
And your Kaivacha Baniyan forecast for Tamil Nadu?
Kaivacha Banyan forecast for Tamil Nadu is that DMK will come, but it won't be such an overwhelming majority as all these weirdos are portraying, right? If you remember, technically, this should have been Jayalalitha's second consecutive term. It was the first time in the last, well, since MGR died pretty much, that government has come back to power, that it hasn't been voted out by a huge majority. So I'm very, again, I think the DMK will win, but it'll be quite a slender victory. I'm seeing a lot of sympathy for the ADMK. Again, the anger is missing. Anger is critical. I remember being on the ground when, Karunanidhi lost the election to Jayalalitha and when Jayalalitha lost the election to Karunanidhi. Sometimes, there isn't anger and it can be a significant victory. For example, the way Jayalalitha handled the tsunami outcome, she performed very respectably. She wasn't wiped out even though she lost the election. I think that is what is going to happen out here. The ADMK will lose, but they lose very respectably. It's not going to be a lopsided outcome. But to be fair, I've been to Bengal. I haven't been to Tamil Nadu for a whole year. So, I might just be talking out of my ass.
Well, the indications are that a certain individual who is associated with a certain scam, in fact, his initial is more related to the scam, and the scam is a number between 1 and 3, and it has a G attached to it. Now I've given you the whole game. He has made some intemperate remarks. He questioned the legitimacy of EPS's parents' marriage, and that seems to have riled up the Taikulam, which is the mother community in Tamil Nadu. And this is something that MGR had carefully cultivated. I don't know if you remember that iconic picture of MGR hugging an old lady. It was in the very first election, and that seemed to have swung it decisively in his favor. And so there is a lot of emotion riding on this. Plus, we don't know what the DKV, the Devendra Kula Velalar dividend is going to be for BJP. They are saying that they could have an impact in about 80 seats. In fact, some of the Tamil channels are saying here is the hidden horse, that this is going to go very decisively one way. Evidently, DVK was a very strong DMK bank, and just because Aragari's wife happens to be from that community, MK Stalin has been cold shouldering the community. You can make up all these things. There's always a reason to like somebody or not like somebody. But these are all some of the reasons given that this is why this guy is, ignoring that community, and they are miffed. And the fact that, it's now law. The bill has been passed in the Lok Sabha. So they expect some really good dividend out of that. Plus, EPS has given 10.5% reservations to 1 years, which is the Patali Makkal Katshi, another critical partner, 22 seats, I believe, in the DMK coalition. So there could be...
Yeah, but see, they didn't give it to Tewars. So apparently the Tewars, who were the lifeblood of the ADMK, are very upset with the ADMK now, and they might vote against. So see, this is the problem. All Indian elections are crystal ball gazing. There is not one voting agency or house that has been able to consistently predict these in any Indian election consistently, accurately over a period of time. We're making all our predictions here. We might end up in the next AMA on Monday, 1 month time, saying, we have egg in our face, and then doing a retrospective analysis of who won, which will again be complete bullshit. Right. This is all just the size of India means you can't really do a statistical methodology. And the problem with India is people say something to an interviewer and they do something quite different when it actually comes to the vote. And it's not they're being duplicitous. Like I've thought of doing some things when I go to vote, and when I actually end up at the polling booth, I will change my mind. Like the last time, for example, in the general elections, I was convinced I'm going to vote for Nota and uh, 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 this Dinakaran's party. But when I was actually at the voting booth, I voted BJP and ADMK at that point. Uh, so it's just one of those things. It's when you actually see it, when you think you're going to do all these things, but when you actually see the buttons in front of you, it it kind of forces a certain decision making on you. So I don't know what it is. Is it duplicity? Is it the gravitas of the moment? We don't know how it's going to go.
And are you going to go home to cast your vote this time too?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. And say hi from all PGurus viewers and fans to your good neighbor Khushbu Sundar. And evidently she's putting up a heck of a fight. That's what I've heard. That she went into a dosa shop, and started making dosas, and that evidently has really got everybody pulling out their cell phones and taking a video of their favorite actress making dosa for them. So these are all gimmicks, but at the same time there are ways in which the Tamil Nadu politicians are finding new creative ways to try and connect with the public. So hopefully they'll keep that connect even after getting elected.
Hopefully, let's see. I've always been a big fan of Khushbu, plus the fact she's my neighbor. Plus, she's a very sweet person. She's a very nice human being. Um, let's see. I'm really hoping for her. The problem is she's standing in Thousand Lights, which I think is Stalin's constituency. Yeah, so it's. I think it's Stalin's, or was it?
Well, he used to contest from there. Now it is being contested by a guy called Dr. Edilan, who is supposed to be a fairly radical guy, and so it depends upon what the mood is. Now,
okay, so in which case I'm hoping Thousand Lights will be very irritated with. And remember, Thousand Lights is a Muslim majority voting area. Khushbu is a Muslim. So I'm kind of hoping she'll be able to. So she's got a positive, but she's also got a big negative. She's the positive, the Lotus is the negative in that particular seat as far as the Muslim vote goes. Let's see. I'm very cautiously optimistic for her. I've promised her I'll come and dance at her house if she wins, which she told me is apparently one very good reason for her not to win. But anyway, let's see what happens.
All right, so let's jump into questions now. The first question is from Anand Iyer. Despite the vacuum left by the deaths of Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi, why is the BJP not making heavy roads into Tamil Nadu? Even I can answer this question, but I'll let you take it.
Repeat. Despite?
He says, despite the deaths of Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha, how come BJP is unable to make inroads?
It's the local party that you've chosen. First was Venkaiah Naidu, who's a very nice human being, but sadly not very competent at getting votes together and things like that. All the states under him, the BJP went nowhere as long as he was there. It's only after he got shifted to vice president that the BJP started making gains, right? Because he wouldn't have any political role to play. The second is the second rung of leadership that they've chosen out there, not really confidence inspiring. There's that one IAS guy who seems to be getting a bit of traction, but Annamalai. But you look at the rest of the party, there's such a huge letdown out there. It's not even funny. They don't seem to get that it's a caste equation out there. Hindutva doesn't work out there, even though it's very fanatically Hindu that way. You look at the kind of piety like Thai Pusam, where people will pierce themselves with spears and things like that. You don't see that piety in the rest of India. They're a very religious people. And yet caste is a big issue out there. And the way, see, the proposition of Hindutva is that religion subsumes caste. In Tamil Nadu, that message hasn't filtered through precisely because the party hasn't been able to fine-tune its message. They haven't been able to localize their message. And their caste is more important than Hindutva. Being a Hindu is a subset of the caste equation out there. It also doesn't help when people like, say, Guru Murthy, for example, think that the entire gamut of Tamil Nadu politics resides between the Kanchi Kamakoti Peetam and what the Agraharam in Mylapore votes. Okay, Brahmins no longer constitute they never have the clinching factor in Tamil Nadu elections. So, you want to play these Tambram politics, that's fine, but it's not going to get you any traction in Tamil Nadu at all.
Well, one would like to see what catapulted Jayalalitha, Brahmin herself, to power. But then one can say, but she's not Tamil. She's a Kannadiga. That's why she won. So anyway,
EPS and OPS are the first Tamil chief ministers of Tamil Nadu in a very, very long time. MGR was Malayali. Karunanidhi is Telugu. Jayalalitha is Kannadiga. And if you look at Rajnikant is Maharashtrian.
Yes.
Okay. So you look at all these big names contending, not one of them is Tamil. So Tamil Nadu's been very open that way. Being Tamil is not about your ethnicity, it's about your culture. And, Jayalalitha is the classic example that you can be a Brahmin. And, she used to keep getting abused and called Papati, which is a derogatory word for Brahmin woman. Papan is the boy, Papati is the woman. She used to keep getting called that by Karunanidhi and co. And she still overcame it. Why? Because, like I said, being Tamil, it's a state of mind. There was that ad when, well, not an ad. There was this meme when Madras's name was changed to Chennai. It says Chennai is a place, but Madras is a state of mind. It's like that. Being Tamil is a state of mind.
Oh, wonderful answer there. Okay. What do you think about Tamil Nadu predictions for BJP? Nayagam is the guy. They are contesting 20 seats. And I will give you what I know, information that I know. The IPS officer, Annamalai, appears to be in the lead. He is fairly erudite. I saw one of his press conferences. He has the knack of not telling what they're expecting him to tell. That management is not easy. He knows when to not say anything. And politics is all about not saying much and yet saying a lot. And I think he has got that knack. And I expect great things from him in the future. Anyway, so what's your prediction? 20 seats, most of them in the south, deep south, and a few in Kovai and in
there's a reason
Chennai.
that it's most of it is in the deep south, because that is where the Christian Hindu schism is quite deep. And the BJP is counting on it. Let's see. My issue there still is, and a lot of the BJP, the local Tamil BJP workers tell me that, the BJP still, even after Venkaiah Naidu going and even after Tamilisai Soundarajan going off, they still haven't grasped what the caste factor in Tamil politics. Or at least they're still trying to play the same Hindutva, one size fits all cut, copy, paste model. It isn't going to work in Kerala, in spite of it being, such a high Christian and such a high Muslim population. It isn't going to work in Tamil Nadu. We'll be lucky if we win 2-3 seats this time in the BJP. I still think the DMK is going to win by a slender majority. But then again, this is like crystal ball gazing. We'll all end up with egg on our faces on when's counting? 2nd May. So 2nd May, we'll all end up with egg on our faces. It won't make a difference for me because I'm already egg-headed, so it's fine.
You are a perfect head. You're not an egghead. You know this thing, right? God created a few perfect heads, and on the rest he put hair. And this applies only to men.
Right. So I've always my we had our school reunion last month, and my Sanskrit teacher in school, she was telling me, your head, Abhijit, is like that Hiranya Garbhasya Patrena from the creation Shukta of the Vedas. So Hiranya Garbhasya Patrena.
Excellent. Next question is from Ashutosh Sharma. I fail to understand how Hindus can continue their way of life anywhere. Why is it that even in our own country, we have to be secular when we already have accommodated various religions?
What's the question?
The question is that he's saying that Hindus have to keep on affirming their secular credentials every day.
Because you're racked with inferiority complexes. You lost the ability to set the narrative 1,300 years back. If you don't set the narrative, you will perpetually end up apologizing for being yourself. Okay? It's that simple. And when the people you have chosen to set your narrative are people like Ramchandra Guha and co, who don't set a national narrative, they set a family or a party narrative. And when the current government has refused to get rid of the storytellers or replace the storytellers with new ones, or when your new storytellers are clowns like Amitabh Kant, this is what you end up getting.
Next question is from Sanjay Vedachalam. Will India get stuck in the middle income trap like Latin America?
No, India will get perpetually stuck, is already stuck in the low income trap. You're not moving out of this anytime soon. Look, 3D printing is going to come on in about 10, 15 years maximum. It's going to start with all the low end stuff like toothbrushes and light bulbs and easy to manufacture things like that, which is not going to affect China so much because China has moved into middle income. It will affect us first because we're still low income. And the opportunity for us to move up the ladder will get permanently shut because in effect we will be in competition with 3D printing. And when you get into competition with 3D printing, the assumption then is that 3D printing will move at a slower pace than Indian regulatory predictability, than India's horrendous labor laws, India's absolutely garbage justice system and things like that, which enables competitiveness. So, it's not happening. Give up this thought that India is going anywhere for the next 80 years. We peak at a population in 2050 where we hit 1.5 billion. And then in 2100, we come down to 1 billion. If anything, look what can happen in 2100. Right off the next 80 years, nothing's going to happen.
And why do you think the population will start falling so rapidly between 2050 and 2100?
That's what all the demographic documents I've seen say. I've been digging up a lot. We'll talk about this next time. Remind me the next time.
Sure.
Because we should have a program just about demographics and why that thing is going to fall.
Let's do that.
Because see that again, it's a complex discussion, but there are a lot of assumptions out there that India will achieve a high literacy rate because, a high literacy rate does lead to a fall in the fertility rate and things like that. So, but anyway, that's a complicated discussion. But anyway, the trajectory is 2050, you peak at 1.5 billion, 2100, you come down to 1 billion. I've not seen projections after that. Let's see what happens. But if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen starting in 2100.
So there's a specific question from this guy called Sanjay Vedachalam. It's his second question. He says, should India also have channels such as France 24, DW, NHK, TRT? These are all media houses in France, which I think are very strong, perhaps.
Well, they're all the national media houses. They're all very good quality. Sure. But the problem is you don't have the capability to produce something like that out here. Okay, because all the accepted storytellers, like I said, are against, they've converted the hatred of the BJP and Modi into hatred of India. So there's nothing you can do about that. The second problem is the storytellers within the BJP are absolute rubbish. You can't basically create something like that when your investment is based all on tamasha and events and uninteresting crap with no ability to invest in human beings. You create great channels by investing in human beings, not in graphics or events. Let me give you a simple example. Amitabh Kant, my favorite whipping boy for all of this. He was in charge of Make in India. What did he do? He spent crores and crores on events, on creating that lion, on having lots of shows that featured him and his Elvis Presley hairstyle. How much did we actually get in through Make in India? Zilch. And now what does he do? He's gone and become the head of Niti Aayog, and he's come up with an absolutely disastrous. I don't know if you people saw that report, that absolutely piece of trash report they produced on the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, converting it into Hong Kong, decimating an ecologically sensitive area, no brains at all. I mean, you just look at it, you know this fellow's a blithering idiot, because nobody wants a big port that close to Singapore when Singapore port is already able to handle everything. Okay, you need to have an economic hinterland, like I've said on this program so many times, of at least 30 to 40 billion dollars for a ship to even consider stopping out there. Okay, so again, it's just the sheer shoddiness of what he produces, but he is your New India storyteller. So if that is the kind of trash you're going to put forward as your narrative makers, then this is what you end up getting. आपकी औकात नहीं है, TRT, even TRT is way ahead of you. Al Jazeera की तो बात ही छोड़ दो. Even though they will have a complete scumbag of a storyteller like Mehdi Hasan, at least he knows how to spin the story. You don't even know that. So no, it is not. You want it, you invest in human beings. You start paying people monthly salaries of 15, 20 lakhs and give them, foreign postings to do first-hand journalism out there. Otherwise, you're going jack all.
And this is going to become more critical because the messaging has to be spot on. And right now, they are relying on the diaspora to do it. It is not easy. You can only do so far, and then people start asking.
Is also divided. Let's not forget that
Yeah,
the diaspora is divided. The trash in America tend to overwhelmingly vote for the Democrats, even though the Democrats will be anti-India and have rabid Hindu haters in them. The trash in the UK will also be overwhelmingly Labour. Why? Because it's just one of those things. They want to fit in that inferiority complex, even though Labour is vitriolically anti-India, full of Khalistanis. And mind you, Sikhs are around 4 to 500,000. Hindus are around 800 to 900,000. And you will still go with Labour, even though Labour, between the Khalistanis and the total number of Pakistanis and Bangladeshis out there, so 2.5 million Muslims, plus 500,000 Khalistanis, you are completely outnumbered out there, but you will still go and vote for Labour. This time, thankfully, in the UK, it changed. They decided to use what counted funding and pushed it towards the Tories, which is what led to that huge Tory victory, which is why you had people like Rishi Sunak and Preeti Patel rewarded so prominently. But in America, this is still a problem. Your diaspora is too divided. Most of the diaspora just hates each other. Your diaspora is not capable of carrying out a narrative campaign, full stop.
Yes, and to add to what you just said, Kamala Devi Harris, the vice president, is seen as a very open borders policy person, and Biden has given her the point person role to try and manage this influx. In fact, today's Daily Global Insights shows one Republican senator showing the actual path in McAllen, Texas, how easy it is to walk across and start claiming, U.S. residency. And it's just mind-boggling. Anyway, we'll see how this plays out. Om Biswal wants to know, Abhijit, which ally would be best and more trustworthy against China? Japan and Taiwan or the USA?
Any day, Japan and Taiwan. Why even ask that question? I
Why?
mean, you've been seeing all the crap that's been happening with Blinken and Biden and all those people, right? Uh, the way Yang Jiechi talked down to Biden and co, do you think they would have even dared, dared to do that under Trump? They wouldn't even impose sanctions on Pompeo till it was clear that Trump had lost the elections, right? And they did impose sanctions on Pompeo, which tells you a lot. Okay, Biden is, you look at his actions, he will say a lot against China, he will do squat all against China. And all the newspapers will talk it up as all his speeches as actions. Keep watching how this happens. You will see it happen. And there's nothing that can be done about it because America is now going um, out. It won't be a bulwark against China. And if you want any proof of that, then look at that comical conference of the Quad leaders where they spoke about everything under the sun except China.
Well, next question from him, Om Biswal. What would be theoretically Russia's stand if China attacks India?
They will take the same stand that they took in 62, which is hands off. In 62, they mildly condemned India, not very strongly, but in private, they really gave it to the Chinese. Today, they will probably mildly condemn China, and in private, they'll give it off to us.
Next question is from Akhil Siddharth. What's the scope of violence happening in West Bengal? Will the Teesta water sharing pact get resolved if BJP comes to power?
Violence, expect a lot. It's been remarkably not violent. I expected a lot more violence. And that also gives me cause for worry. And I'll tell you why. The CPIM and the TMC, they relied entirely on booth management, which is their goons will, wherever security is deployed, their goons will stand just outside that cordon and pretend to be helping people when in fact they will be vetting who votes for us, who does not vote for us, prevent those who vote against us from even entering the booth, or see to it somebody else comes and votes in their name before they do. Okay. Now, what happens here is the moment it was known that Bengal was going to have an 8-stage election, they immediately changed their tactic to district management, which is that you prevent people from even leaving their houses, which theoretically should have led to violence. That hasn't led to violence can be interpreted both ways. That the security presence was either quite heavy enough to prevent district management from happening, or that district management was very successful. Because remember, your strength, when you feel stronger when there is a CRPF guy or a BSF guy in front of you saying this guy is preventing me from coming in. Whereas when you're coming out of your own road, if there's a guy preventing you from going anywhere near the booth, you're not very confident. So again, it can go both ways.
Next question is from Arjun. Finished reading 16 Stormy Days. Thanks for the recommendation. Any hope that the right-wing establishment in India can set up a jurisprudence doctrine for the right and get judges on benches?
No and no, because they don't understand the need for an elite replacement. They're under this, you watch that movie Sikandar-e-Azam and that song, Jahan Dal Dal Par Sone Ki Chidiya Karti Hai Basera. They live under that illusion that India, everything is perfect. It just needs great leadership, charismatic leadership, and everything will fix itself properly. Okay. When you live in a delusion like that, you're basically not going to fix anything, and the time is going to leave you and the tide is going to turn against you. Let me give you an example, several examples, in fact. What was the first thing that the Romans did when they invaded Gaul? They killed off all the druids even in Britain, they killed off all the Druids and replaced it with the Roman religion. When the Normans invaded Britain in 1066 because they wanted it to be a permanent conquest, what did they do? Within 5 to 10 years, the landholding went from being 100% Anglo-Saxon to less than 1% Anglo-Saxon. The remaining 99% were Norman warlords. All the land was reparceled to them. Nehru executed his institutional capture within about 3 to 4 years of Sardar Patel dying. Now, BJP voters would have you believe that even 7 years is not enough to do what William the Conqueror did in the space of 1 or 2 years, what Nehru did in 3 years. And given that Nehru was such an indolent, lazy fellow, for him to be doing it in 3 years and for you not to be doing it in 7 years is truly astounding. And what the Turks did when they invaded in 1192, they replaced the entire ruling class, lock, stock, and barrel. Initially Prithviraj Chauhan's son was put up as a puppet ruler, which nobody wants to talk about, incidentally. And then he just disappears from the record because they take over direct control. Okay, this story that Jayachand was a traitor is complete nonsense. Jayachand actually never supported the Turks. He died fighting the Turks. But yet, your narrative is that Jayachand was a traitor. And the entire, wherever they go, they replace the entire ruling class. You look at the Madurai Sultanate. Where were the Hindus in the ruling this thing? Nowhere. You go back to the source. This Audrey Trusky, Fraudery Trashky, the figure she keeps quoting is, there were more Hindus in the Mughal administration under Aurangzeb than under any previous ruler. Show me the primary source for it. Because there is no statistical accounting for it. And nobody's challenged her on it. That is the intellectual depth of the right wing. Because you go check the source, it's just a throwaway statement again, which is based on another throwaway statement. There is no actual statistical accounting for it. And it's also there in your NCERT book, your NCERT history book of medieval India, which you do in the 7th standard in middle school. What are you going to do? You don't want to change anything. You don't want to change the syllabuses. You don't want to change the books. You don't want to change the vice chancellors. You don't want to change the institutional positions. What are you going to do? For change to be long-lasting, you need a complete institutional sweep, which the Congress does very well. Remember, the first action of the Madhya Pradesh government when Kamal Nath took over and of Rajasthan when Gehlot took over was to dismiss all the bodies the BJP had set up. You don't want to do the same thing. Why? Because Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam.
Next question is from Chaitan Kumar. Do you regret anything in life?
Not really, not even jail, surprisingly. It's been a very rich life. You learn from mistakes, you don't regret them. So no, I don't regret. No, I don't regret anything. Like I've maybe 1 or 2 things where I was a really a nasty character when I was in, I was going through a lot of emotional upheaval in my early teens. But outside of that, where I hurt a lot of good people, in that, say between 15 to 21, 22, other than that, no real regrets, no.
I mean, you're fairly positive in your outlook. I think that speaks for itself.
You're the first person to tell me I'm positive. Everybody says, oh, Abhijit, they only come here for their weekly dose of pessimism.
No, I see the thing about this is sometimes speaking the truth is also looked at as being pessimistic. The reason, why do you point somebody's flaws? Because you know that person is capable of correcting it. I mean, if the person is not capable of correcting it, you stop pointing that. I mean, you're wasting time. So anyway, we hopeful that India has in it what it takes to take it to the next level, and that's where all these things happen. hope springs eternal. Chetan Kumar wants to know, what can IFS aspirants like me learn about the diplomacy of Pakistan, Israel, and China? Any specific IFS officer that you would like me to follow?
If I tell you who the officers are, they'll have a big target painted on their head. So there are, in fact, quite a few very good IAS officers, and the problem is they're hated by their colleagues because they actually work. They actually do what they're meant to do. So my only advice to you would be, do what you're meant to do, but do it very silently, and don't display your brilliance or your precociousness very openly, because that will make you enemies. Number one. Number two, what you learn from different people is different things. The Pakistanis don't do primary source collection, but they're very good at passing on institutional knowledge and contacts from one officer to his successor when he replaces them in a foreign posting. They're very good at passing on institutional knowledge at foreign ministry headquarters. Well, technically it's ISI headquarters, but whatever. And they're very good at charming people. From the Israelis, you learn all about how to manage lobbies, how to deal with the diaspora, and how to deal with how to gather primary source intelligence. Okay, very slow, careful, meaningful, on the ground primary data gathering, which turns into intelligence. It's all open source, and yet it's collected in a brilliant way that turns it in. In India, we have none of the above. We neither have the charm of the Pakistanis, their training, the way they are trained to charm you consistently. They're not given. Why? Because it was assumed, because at one point of time, all the bureaucrats came from a certain section of society, that you'd be able to charm anybody you chose to. Today, because the IFS has gotten so democratized, you literally have people thrown into foreign postings with no social skills, no diplomatic skills, except that they've passed an exam. And that becomes very, very, very problematic. No communication skills, no external diplomacy skills even. And that's very problematic. So, invest in yourself. Be aware of the things that you will not be trained in, and train yourself for those things.
And the next question is from Chaitanya. What is your view on the China-Iran deal? Are Iranians close to China now? I think they signed a 25-year cooperation deal.
Look, they can sign whatever the hell they want. The thing is, it still means absolutely nothing on the ground. Okay, there's a fundamental connectivity problem. The Chinese are already having problems with Pakistan throwing up all kinds of barriers to CPEC and things like that. Turkmenistan is very careful on what it allows and what it does not allow. So, how are you going to breach all these land border issues, connectivity issues, and things like that? So, on paper, it sounds very good, but this is like your, MOU with, I don't know, Timbuktu's in Mali. So MOU with Mali on space exploration, because, Mali is going to be the next big space power. Okay. Or I don't know, with North Korea on producing a fusion reactor, because, North Korea is the cutting edge of fusion technology, of nuclear fusion technology. So, it's like that. It's like those treaties of everlasting friendship and peace that used to be signed in the 40s and 50s, because Chinese jargon is still stuck in, 20, 30, 40s, 50s jargon.
Next question is from Anosh Amaria. In the India-Pakistan ceasefire agreement, is there a clause that covers non-military personnel attacks or fire coming from Pakistan? Non-military.
No, there isn't, which is the whole problem with the treaty. It is a state-to-state ceasefire. It does not account for the actions of non- or sub-state actors. And therein lies the problem. If the Indian state responds to an action by a terrorist group, India has broken the ceasefire, not Pakistan.
Wow. Sudhindra wants to know, psephology is a very precise science. Who, in your opinion, is the best psephologist in India?
Let's see. And this is, because a lot of them they've not been consistent. They've also got things wrong. But Yashwant Deshmukh, today's Chanakya used to be good, and then I don't know what happened to them. They got a string of things wrong. Pradeep Bhandari, Jan Ki Baat. He's had one or two mistakes, but otherwise, generally speaking, he's got a very good hit rate. But look, the problem again here is to get psephology right, you need to get your sociology right. Sociology is such a backward science in India, and it's so full of either Marxist bullshit or right-wing codswallop. It's impossible to get your prediction models right. Because psephology is a dependent science, it isn't a standalone science. And when, it's that computer programming principle of GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So if you've either got Marxist bullshit going in or right-wing bullshit going in, your psephological predictions end up being bullshit. Some have been narrowing the gap down based on trial and error, but see, psephology isn't something where you can get it entirely right based on trial and error. Your theoretical foundation, your understanding of society and societal functions has to be very, very good.
Here's a good question. Chetan Kumar wants to know your view on Ro Khanna, who tweeted out the Bengali Hindu genocide in 1971, but no mainstream media in India spoke about it. That's rare coming from Ro Khanna.
I think Ro Khanna is worried about his funding. He'll sell his own mother if the funding, if he could get funding in for it. So I don't think much of Ro Khanna. You remember how hostile he was to India, how hostile he was to Modi. Now, it's one thing me being hostile to Modi. I'm an Indian citizen. I've earned that right. He's not a bloody Indian citizen. He doesn't get to talk to my prime minister any way he wants. Okay, he'll bloody well behave himself and not wag his dirty brown tail. I will talk to my prime minister any way I choose because I vote, I pay taxes. That bugger does not. That fellow is a snake. Okay, so I don't give a damn that he tweeted one tweet. And this thing that we should somehow look up to Ro Khanna because he put out one sympathetic tweet in a barrage of otherwise undiluted hostility towards India is, the great tragedy of the Indian NRI community out there. We're like a bunch of dogs, one little good boy and tap on the head, and you're very happy. You don't want any tangibles in return. You're like a little, sadak ka kutta. Good boy, ye lo laddu kha lo bacche. Bas, ho gaya. Aur kuch nahi. Arey, laddu bhi nahi. At least you should have the brains to ask for a laddu. Not even that. You just want a good boy on the head and a little scratch on the head. You don't even want the scratch on the head. You just want good boy. Bas. So
Next question.
I don't take Ro Khanna seriously. If he tweeted, great. The Indian media, why are we even discussing the Indian media? I've told you it is a governmental function to cleanse the old elites and bring in new elites. So stop blaming the media, boss. After 7 years, if you're still having to blame the media, you've got nobody but yourself to blame.
Hey, I have a question for you. This just happened when you were answering this question. So let's hypothetically say that the top 3 media houses, TV for example, are all ready for a change and they are offered on a pallet to you. The top 3 being Republic, NDTV. NDTV is not top 3, but it seems the most likely candidate to be offered on a platter to someone who wants to take it up. And Times. Which channel would you choose? Because you are going to be the guy who's going to be the face of the channel, and why?
NDTV. You know why? Because you've got a left captive audience, and that is where you slowly start the drop by drop introduction of heroin. Feed it to them drop by drop. Keep it still 90% anti-Modi but 10% pro-Modi heroin, right? Drop by little drop till they become an addict. And remember, NDTV's strength is YouTube. It's YouTube and the website. It's not the TV channel. Nobody watches their TV channel. Fixed ratings or not fixed ratings, their TV channel viewership is crap. That is why they had to tweet out their viewership ratings in the UK without telling you it was UK viewership ratings. Their website, on the other hand, is excellent. They curate news better than anybody else. Their YouTube channel has the highest number of viewers of any Indian news channel. 10 million plus viewers, I think. And 10 million plus viewers usually means 10 factor of between 7 to 10 times the number of views. So for 10 million viewers, you'll get about 70 million views or 100 million views kind of thing. So so NDTV, because Republic and Times Now preach to the converted. I don't want to preach to the converted.
Well, you have an excellent point there, and but the content on their YouTube channel is their own, isn't it? That's what also comes on their TV.
Yeah, it's clips, but see, it's very carefully curated clips. And the thing is, the thing about YouTube is it allows you time management. TV does not allow you time management. You have to sit down and watch only from this time to this time. Whereas YouTube is like an online recording and storage and archiving mechanism. So you can go back and refer to it.
So true, so true. In fact, I do that thing almost as a habit. Pavan Talluri wants to know, what do you think of Dr. J.P. Narayan's views on judiciary, police reforms, and Foundation for Democratic Reforms think tank? You know who Dr. J.P. is, right? Lok Satta.
Jayaprakash Narayan?
Yes, Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan.
That
He
was
is
in
a
the 70s.
modern day person, Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan. He's an IAS officer. Okay, so you don't know, so we'll pass it. By the way, Pavan, we already have had one round of Q&A with him. When I met him, when he came visiting to the Silicon Valley a few years ago, I even asked him about how come he lost in the most educated constituency in India, because he's supposed to be like an intellectual. Just to give our viewers a quick background, Dr.
Is this
Jayaprakash,
the same man who started up a party in 2019 before the 2019 elections?
not 2019. He has been, that party came into being, I think, about 2005 or 6. It's called Lok Satta, Loksatta.
But it was a party, it was meant to be right wing, right? As in economically right wing.
Yeah, economically right wing. Yes.
Right. I think I interacted with him once or twice, but nothing ever came of it. Like, we never really interacted. He was too busy. So, yeah.
So, just for our viewers' benefit, Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan trained to be a doctor, and after finishing that and practicing medicine for a couple of years, he saw the Janata Party experiment implode in 1979, and he really got disgusted. He said, "I need to do something for this country," and he decided to sit for the IAS exams. I believe he came in the top 5. It could be number 2. I'm not 100% sure. And he became an IAS officer, Andhra cadre. And at a very young age, he was chosen to be the chief secretary of N.T. Ramarao. And after that, I think a few years he hung around in the IAS, and then he decided that that was not for him, and he got into politics. He started his own party, and the party actually won some seats, but then in the recent polls hasn't done that well. I don't have the latest on him. He's a great person to have on our channel. We will definitely try and bring him back because there's so much that has changed in the last few years. The next question is from Vikram Razdan. How can sweeping changes be made by BJP without changing the constitution? Isn't a slow attrition type approach the only alternative available?
As a rule, If it is slow, it loses momentum and the change gets diluted. Because remember, reforms work when they're implemented in a bunch, because policy is intersectional. If you do it piece by piece by piece, there is something called negative synergy, and negative synergy sets in. Okay, so for example, a 4-tier GST system, technically it should have been fantastic. Okay, it met the state's demand, it met the center's demand. The problem, as we could have told you from day one, is that it will be used for extortion, because what goes with a 4-slab GST is police reforms and more tax collector reforms, like, forcing them to wear body cameras, number one. And number two, if they get their adjudications wrong, first adjudication, they are denied bonuses. Second adjudication, they are put on 6 months unpaid leave. Third adjudication against them, they are sacked permanently. These things had to have been introduced. But just going ahead and implementing a 4-slab GST, you've converted it to a full-on. So high-level corruption is almost entirely over. Low-level corruption has never been better before. Okay, the extortion, you've turned every tax collector into a full-blown extorter who will extort you, not because you are going to get convicted or because his decision against you is accurate, but because he knows he can cause you a lot of trouble simply by dragging you to an arbitration process, which will cost you time and money, which you will ultimately win, but you want to pay just to get out of. Right. So this is the kind of negative synergy that sets in, that is hurting a lot of businesses in between. So you either do it at one shot, packages, reform packages, or, the effects are complete negative synergy.
Next question is from Vipin Kumar. Sir, the partition of India was horrific, but looking at today's Pakistan condition, was it a blessing in disguise?
Of course, this is what Arun Shuri used to keep saying. And Arun Shuri is one of the few intellectuals the right actually produced, the modern intellectuals. Old intellectuals to काफी सारे थे. Modern intellectual में कोई नहीं है. Arun Shuri was one of them. But, excuse me. But, he used to say that, he still says, that partition was a blessing in disguise. It gave the Hindus room to breathe, and I do believe that partition was the best thing that happened to India under the circumstances. Well, not the best, it was the least worst of a whole load of bad options.
Ajay Nair wants to know, why can't India invest heavily in Afghanistan? Can we not create more goodwill by providing employment, healthcare, education, infra, etc.?
So here's the issue. We've done what we can, and we've done very well, surprisingly. Why can't you provide education, infra, and all of that? Because, see, the Afghans need to want it. It's like going to, Sentinel Island. And, the comparison isn't very far off, because understand, Afghanistan is a pre-industrial tribal society with very few urban centers, whereas the Sentinelese still live in the Stone Age. But other than that, the behavioral patterns are very similar, extremely violent societies. And it's like going and giving the Sentinelese a film theater for them to watch Star Wars. What the hell are they going to understand? One of the outreaches to the Jarvas was to go teach them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and A, B, C, D, E. Well, Kaka, Gaga, Na. And you're sitting there and thinking, why? These people are happy where they are. Just leave them alone. What the hell do you think you're trying to do? No, you want to go and civilize them. That same Christian civilizational mission. Why they don't want contact with you? Why do you want contact with them? The Afghans are very happy being what they are. Give them what they want, not what you want to give them. They've got a very specific list of things. They want money to keep the current system in order, which is basically a feudal, landlord-driven extortion system. Fine. We are not there to create social changes. Don't make this mistake of nation building that the Americans made. They want weapons, they want money. Give them weapons, give them money. They want some agricultural assistance, which we've done very well. Excellent. Stop at that. We've given them half of what they want. We need to give them the remaining half of what they want.
Keval wants to know, how long will it take to saffronize Kerala and Tamil Nadu? Not in my lifetime.
Not in my lifetime. Not in your lifetime either, possibly. Boss, you need a mindset attitude. Like I said, you need to understand how these two states are different. Even Andhra and Telangana, you're not really making big inroads in there. Yeah.
I think Telangana they have. BJP has cracked through Telangana.
See, the point is, it's sustainable or not. That is what I want to see. One time isn't a measure.
Correct.
It has to be.
You have to be consistent.
3 times before it. Exactly. So I don't think they've gotten it. Karnataka, they understood very well, because remember, being based out of Maharashtra, if you don't understand your own backyard well, shame on you. But Andhra may be there, and by Andhra I mean Telangana and Andhra. I'm sorry, I always think of it as Andhra Pradesh. But Tamil Nadu and Kerala, I still don't think they've gotten even 1 micromillimeter of what the problem is.
There may be some, let's see. I have some different inputs, but again, it has to be proven on the ground. Mahesh Joshi wants to know, how do you rate the foreign policy of India? Any headway on our strategies with our neighbors?
Foreign policy is made by people. When the people aren't good, the policy isn't going to be good. You can have some fantastic, brilliant people in the foreign service, but they account for, say, 1 or 2% of the foreign service. When the remaining 98% is there just for the grandeur and the show of, and mere ko foreign assignment mil gaya, foreign assignment, then, it's not really all that good. It'll become good when you invest in human beings. It'll become good when you invest in primary intelligence gathering. It will be good when you staff it with the 3,000 people it requires rather than the 680. It has actually come down under Modi. It went from 720 down to 680. It needs, manpower shortage, no human investment, no primary data gathering. How do you expect it to be good? It's the sum of its parts.
Well. Next question is Swarup Kaushik. Do you think the wokes will take control of the economics field just like they have taken control of the humanities?
Who will take control?
Woke, W-O-K-E.
Of course they will. Of course they will. Because remember, we don't realize this. See, the problem in India is that the people who choose humanities are the mutakoses and mutals. How do you say that in Hindi? The Uluka Patthas and the Chutias, who could not get into engineering, who could not get into medicine, who could not get into STEM basically. उनको हम हिंदुस्तान में चूतिया मानते हैं या उल्लू का पट्टा मानते हैं, और in Tamil Nadu what we call mutakosu, mutale, arivigeta etc, etc, etc. Okay. The humanities controls the narrative of mankind, boss. They determine what scientific progress was determined by the church. Why? Did the church know better science? No. Right? How did scientific progress change in Europe? Because of the Reformation and the forces it set in. Not that the Protestant church was much more open, but the forces of churn that they set out is what led to the scientific revolution ultimately. Right? Why was India so good at science once upon a time? Was it because of the scientific mindset? No, it was the humanities mindset. Humanities sets the narrative for everything else. Till you get good at the humanities and understand sociology properly, anthropology properly, I tend not to like the word sociology because, anthropology can be very scientific. Sociology has been completely overtaken by these baboons, woke and lefty baboons. Um, that said, I don't know if you people read, but the god of wokeism today, Foucault, there's a huge controversy that's erupted yesterday and today because people decide to go visit the fact that he was a sick little pedophile who was raping 8 and 10-year-old kids in Africa through the 70s, and nobody had the guts to call him out for it, which shows you the intellectual depravity of the woke movement. It is based on child rape and pedophilia. That is the intellectual caliber of the woke. But here's the tragedy of it. If they control humanities, they control everything else. Because science has always been subject to society. Engineering, which is another part of science, all of what we call today high tech are all scientific subjects. They are all subject to the humanities. Humanity giving you permission or not. Stem cell research, is it considered ethics? It's called ethics. But see, ethics also acts as a control on science. At one point of time, you could not say, because it was considered against God if you said that the earth wasn't the center of the universe or even the solar system. So the humanities control of science has always been absolute. It will always be absolute. And in India, we're so bad because in India, it's only the chimpanzees and the monkeys like me who go join the humanities. All the smart people like Sree Iyer, they go join computer science and things. So they can't control the world.
Why are you dragging me into this?
Right?
Akshay Chitnis wants to know, as per AIM's analysis, your analysis, India is hopeless in anything and everything under the sun. So, why world leaders waste time in visiting India and allow us in quad-like groups?
Very good question. So, it has to do with this belief. Remember, you think they're courting you. If you generally look at the importance that India gets in meetings and things like that, it isn't very high. You look at the amount of time any foreign office of any country in the world expends on India, it is minimal, which is also a saving grace, because when India fails to deliver, the disappointment isn't that great because you're much lower in the priority list. Number one. So you think they are quoting you because in India, the India-centric press will only tell you whatever Jen Psaki or before that Miss Huckabee or whatever it was would say about India once a week, as opposed to say Israel or the UK, which would be discussed every day. But you think it is important. Number one. So number one is your perception of the problem. The second is the fact that there is this belief that India is, that numbers, that demography is the future. And therefore, by virtue of being such a big country, you do play a role, which is partially true, but it's also partially untrue. Why? Because why is Israel with 7 million people always higher up in everybody's diplomatic list than, say, Indonesia with 250 million people and sitting on the Malacca Straits? And yet you tell me, other than for, say, Malaysia or Singapore, who is top priority in their foreign policy, Israel or Indonesia? Right? So again, combine one, perception, with this belief that demography needs to be dealt with. And you should read this book. It's I forget the name. I will it's the India-US Diplomatic Papers. This brilliant, very low-key State Department guy published. He published 2 works. One was in India, Pakistan. One was on Cooks. Yeah, Dan Cooks, Kux. I always connect his name with the Ku Klux Klan. It's Cooks, Kux. Check it out. You will see what a low priority India actually has in the decision-making process, historically in America. There are a few books that will also show you historically in Russia how India was fairly low. And the third reason in all of this is because China is enemy number one. And unlike the Soviet Union, where India had a serious moral ambiguity, in the case of China, India's moral ambiguity is still very irritating, but it's a lot less with China. Right? So India is important for the time being, which will wax and wane. But it keeps all these three, remember, they're not individual reasons. You have to fuse them all together.
Next question, Sunil Jakaraju. Abhijit, I have a 12-year-old son. On what area should I guide him so that he'll be able to do something in India?
Send him out of India. I'm dead serious.
Actually, I have an opposite view.
Send him out of India. I'm dead serious about it. Don't send him to an Anglophone country. Send him to a Francophone country or something like that, where he'll actually get a proper education. It won't be, because, you know, the Anglophone countries are all in the grip of a woke disease at the moment. But let him be. Give him as much as you can to read on everything under the sun. Don't restrict him to what you want, and see where it goes. It'll change. When he's like 14, he'll want to do something. When he's 21, he'll want to do something completely different. Just let it be. That's it. There's no right way of parenting, boss. Plus, you're asking me. I'm a single man, 43. But, you know, going back to my parents, I wish they'd just let me be. They did to a large extent, which is why I did ultimately what I wanted to do, which I think was a pretty decent thing. They did try to coerce me and force me into doing certain things because, you know, like, I wanted to do my master's in history. I wanted to do my bachelor's in history also. And they were like, no, you're going to be on the streets. You're going to be begging on the roads. We don't want that for you. You're going to become a watchman, or you're going to become a chaprasi in a thing if you do your BA history or your MA history and things like that. And, you know, ultimately I had to say screw you to them and do my own thing. But they generally let me do my own thing. That's, I think, the only thing you can do.
If I could just add my 2 cents to this, I'd encourage you to, not Abhijit, but the questionnaire, to watch one video that we put on PGurus, a conversation with an investor called Saurabh Mukherjee. Now, the takeaway from that was that India is such a huge consumption place. If you can find the right thing that India needs, you will do better than perhaps many other countries. A simple example there he takes is that of the success story of Asian Paints. Asian Paints is not the best paint, but it is the most profitable stock. If you take any stock across the world, it has made more money than even Amazon for its investors. And he tells you why they did that. What is it that they did that was different? You don't have to be the best product. You have to solve the right problem. Anyway, this is just, a 12-year-old is still impressionable. My 2 cents is there is more money to be made in India than any other country today. In fact, US is in a state of decline. I'll tell you a simple reason why.
But Sree, aren't you assuming that the kid wants to make money and wants to go into business?
No, you can be successful. Yes, that is true. But you can, see, sometimes it is not all about money, Abhijit. Sometimes it is about...
That's my point. That's my point. It's not about markets and making money. No. It may be for this kid, but it may not necessarily be. Maybe the kid is artistically inclined. Maybe
let me finish one thing that I was going to say. Today, you said it yourself. Most of the universities are going to be in Anglophonic universities, and there right now it is not a good time to be. They're going through hell right now. I'm assuming that the person who asked the question is a Hindu. It's tough time. We are putting up a very, very stiff fight. What could we do with Audrey Trishke? Nothing. The things are continuing on as they were. However, one sliver of win was that the Chicago City Council did not go through with their anti-CAA resolution. But we know how much work it took to see them, to make them to see the truth. It was the truth that we showed them. There was no embellishment. The other side was all embellishment. Anyway, I'm going on a rant here. That's my 2 cents. Let's go to next question. Shalab Pradhan wants to know, what's your opinion on Rajiv Malhotra's books on AI and his research work?
I haven't read the AI one. The only one of his books I read was Breaking India which I thought was really, really good. But after that, I haven't read his books, so I can't really comment.
Sasta Vikas wants to know, can you explain why British people, media, government, and establishment are so anti Hindu? Why are they so negative about everything India?
Because you haven't created the leverage. As I think it was an American general who said, if you grab people by the balls, their hearts and minds will follow. Now, Islam has done it through suicide bombings. How you do it is entirely up to you. You have financial purse strings to control, you can do it. Or like China, if you've got an investment market, you can do it. But the problem is your diaspora does not want to do it. Because they're more interested in pursuing their own personal goals. You're not a big enough market to threaten people like China is. China is now threatening anybody who puts on this cotton Xinjiang tag, as in banning Xinjiang cotton because of human rights concerns. They're completely blackballing them in China. And that's a very, very powerful tool of coercion. So you have none of the tools available to you. You don't have a thriving, vibrant market to with foreigners access to it to use as leverage, except for some. You could probably use it against Korea because it's such a big thing for Hyundai and Kia. You could probably use it against Japan because it's such a big market for Toyota. But that's about it. You have all these levers. You don't want to use those levers, or you don't have those levers. It's that simple.
Vikrant Nalkur wants to know, shouldn't India invest in Surinamese and Mauritian Pravasi Bhartiyas than those in the UK, US? At least these migrants are proud of their Hindu heritage.
Yes, but what are they going to do? What is Mauritius going to do for India or Hindus? What are the Surinamis going to do for India or the Hindus? So invest how? It's not like Mauritius has a swing vote at the UN. It's not like Suriname has a swing vote at the UN. Right? So treat everybody with respect, but understand where to invest. And investment is two kinds. One is carrot, the other is sticks. You need to understand both. Dealing with your NRI community isn't only about sweet talking, it's also about using threats every now and
then. Next question is from Vipin Kumar. Sir, should India provide access to China from northeast to the Arabian Sea to negate Pakistan's CPEC?
Should India provide
access to China to the Arabian Sea? No, it should be the Bay of Bengal. That's what he means. To negate Pakistan's CPEC.
Either or, boss, no. And I'll tell you why very simply, because that road project does not make sense. As we've discussed, road projects and pipeline projects like this, they lose their viability every 400 kilometers, depending on terrain. It costs more to transport fuel 400 kilometers on a truck. It takes up more fuel than the amount of fuel you're transporting 400 kilometers at sea level. When you go higher up at altitude, it loses. This is why I keep saying CPEC is a complete, it's economic rubbish. It's essentially ab initio thought of as a debt trap. That's all it realistically is. And no, we shouldn't. If the Chinese want to burn their money, why should we provide them with something profitable? A, and B, it's not profitable. So what are we gaining by letting them come in here? I don't think you realize how much of India is actually compromised to China worse than Biden is. Okay, because the amount of Chinese construction activity you see in Gurgaon is next level. The amount they've invested in India in big CEOs and corporate structures and things like that is next level. They have a certain control over policy. When after Doklam, your foreign minister does not want to name China, call out China by name, you should be thinking why. So no, I don't want more of the Chinese. Now, if you were smart enough to say sab kuch build to operate hoga, Chinese can put up roads, Chinese can put up nuclear reactors, Chinese or energy stations or whatever, but it's built to operate. and you can control them through a very good counterintelligence, counter-espionage setup, by all means, I'd say do it. If not, no.
Next question. Vipin Kumar again. Can lotus bloom in Punjab once the benefits of farm laws start to trickle in?
That is truly crystal ball gazing. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It maybe if you see, you have to create a vacuum. Right now, it's Congress versus the Akalis. If one of them is permanently eclipsed, that creates a vacuum where the lotus can move in, yes. But for that, one of the two parties has to be permanently destroyed for it to become a two-way fight all over again.
Next question is from Mysore 356. What is this? Why do you think NRIs have not created any substantial political base anywhere, even though the numbers are fairly big, including the USA? I think that's not true. NRIs are creating a political base. It may not be the base you want.
NRIs have created a base in the UK, and I think we can see that with Tories' victory, where they ensured that Labour was deprived of funds, and all those funds went, well, the huge majority of those funds went to the Tories. Number one. Number two, in America, they are way too divided. They come together on certain issues, like, for example, in New York, they came together for the swastika, against the swastika ban. But you look at, say, Seattle, where they failed completely in the CA and RC thing. That was my classmate, Archana Sunil. She and I went to school together, and she was the one that talked down to that horrible creature, Kshama Sawant or whatever it is. But we failed out there. Kshama Sawant herself is Indian, right? So remember, most of the people you have sent there have an inferiority complex. They want to blend in. They don't want to stand out. They don't want to create trouble. They're very much creatures of their environment.
Next question is from Abhi Singh. Love how you own Indian dog breeds like I do. Your thinking of inferiority complex is so deep that it reflects on which dog breed we own. Also, lots of love to PGurus from Karnataka. Thank you for that. But what is your question or answer on dogs?
Yes, so I only have Desi dogs. They're amazing. They're really, really smart. They're much cleaner than foreign dogs. During lockdown, because there's no water pressure in my house, I couldn't bathe the babies. For 3 months, they never stank. You come to my house, it won't have that doggy smell. Right? So they're smart. They're extremely loving and caring. They're everything a foreign breed like a golden retriever can give you. They're probably not as aggressive as a Rottweiler can, so you probably can't use them in an attack role. And because they're fundamentally all terriers, you can't get the kind of discipline that you can probably get with a German Shepherd dog or something like that. But if you want it for companionship and love at home, and you don't want it for police work or a circus, they're the best. And yes, I do think your choice of dogs reflects your inferiority complex. I do. I fundamentally do. Right? Why do you want a pug? Because you saw it in a Vodafone ad, you think it is cute. You don't have kids because you think they're cute. You have kids for a certain reason. There is age security reasons. There's the need to pass on your thing. There's religious reasons, etc., etc., etc. Having a dog is a bit like that. And yes, I do think this Indian obsession with breeds is particularly bad. It's different in a country like America, where you can't get stray dogs. They've mostly been killed off. So, you kind of have to go for a breed. But in India, no.
Next question. Vipin Kumar. When will India make high-end components of mobile phones? Till then, should we have to put up with the Chinese?
India will start making components for mobile phones when you reform your labor laws. You set in place a very good regulatory mechanism to prevent regulatory shocks. when you have a very good judicial system that solves your arbitration issues very, very quickly, when you have a police that doesn't extort, when you don't have governance by cess, tax, and levy, which keep changing every 6 months to a year, and when you reform your education system.
Next question is from Sai. Is the US still a good place for higher studies, computer science, and opening startups?
I don't know about opening startups, but if you go to the second tier universities that have not been affected by wokeism, say like University of New Mexico or things like that, then yes, it's very good. They won't come after you. You can live in a little science bubble. But remember, ultimately, the woke pansies will come for you. It's good now. I can't say if it's going to be good 4 or 5 years down the line. It's probably better you go off to a non-Anglophone country.
I think we need to have some yardsticks for people to understand that when we say that non-Anglophone countries, which are the countries which have a fairly good standard of education? Would Germany be a good place, for example?
Germany would be a very good place. See, Germany is in the grips of some kind of wokery, but the thing is, it hasn't transmitted into the sciences so far. On the other hand, in Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, it is significantly penetrated into the sciences. Right? In Finland, it has not. In France, it absolutely has not. And now the government is determined to crush wokery out of all their educational institutions. So France would be very good. In Italy, I haven't seen wokery at all at universities. And, Italian universities are pretty damn decent. Switzerland, Austria, again, very decent places. The Czech Republic, very decent. Spain, Portugal, yeah, University of Coimbra, if you go to, that would be good. But yeah, I mean, there are places you can go to. Think of going to Japan. Okay, Sophia University, I have friends who came out of Sophia University, the University of Tokyo, very good. So there are places you can go to, but you can still be protected. The issue is always language. You want it easy because you want everything in English. That's the big issue there.
Thank you. Devashish Chatterjee wants to know, were most of the rapes during Operation Searchlight in 1971 on Hindu Bengali women, or are we falling for a false narrative by cunning use of the word Bengali?
No, it actually was on Hindus, right? Initially, look, there were significant rapes of non-Hindu Bengalis as well. The problem is, you look at the nature of the Pakistani state, it always wants religion to trump ethnicity or language. So how it's very successfully turned the Pashtuns against their Afghan Pashtun brothers using religion, it failed to do in Bangladesh using Islam to overcome ethnicity. And it tried to do that by focusing a large part, not all, but a large part of those measures on Hindus to break up the ethnic unity through religion. So yes, it is actually true. It isn't fake that the overwhelming majority of those raped and killed were Hindus.
Wow. The next question is from Siddharth Singh. What can we do to deter or punish Turkey? I think it's already happening, right? KSA and
It's
UAE.
not. It's not. Well, nothing from India. But I think the very first things you can do is air links. Is to, kick Turkish out and impose primary, secondary, and tertiary sanctions on TRT. Journalists who work there, especially the Indians, because TRT has a very unique policy of recruiting Kashmiris, and usually the Kashmiris are people recommended because no Kashmiri wants to go to Pakistan. Once upon a time when Pakistan was richer, I remember while growing up, Pakistan was more prosperous and we were the beggar state. You remember that famous 1980s cartoon? It said there was a fence and there was a Pakistani dog and an Indian dog. The Indian dog was starving. The Pakistani dog was well fed. And the Pakistani dog was saying, I get very good food, but I can't bark. And the Indian dog was saying, I don't get food, but I can bark as much as I want. So at one point of time, all these Hurriyat wanted to go to Pakistan. Today, they'll be like, I don't want anybody or any one of my relatives to go to Pakistan. So what does Pakistan do? They instead send you to Turkey. So you put Turkey on a travel, on an education blacklist. Not that that'll hurt them. It'll really prevent our people from going there. But, the Indian population, Indians are some of the biggest travelers. We're the second or third biggest market for every big airline that there is. Etihad, Emirates, Lufthansa, Air France, Turkish especially, which shows you the level of why Turkish flies so many planes to India, to so many cities. You cut that, it hurts. It's one of the few levers you have, use it. Sir,
Next question.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh, I think we should call it a close now, because I still have too many questions to go through. And viewers, I'm sorry to disappoint you. We have at least 25, 30 questions, but it is time, and Abhijit needs to leave now. It's 90 minutes since we started, and hopefully you can turn in your questions a little bit earlier, and that will help us to kind of prioritize them and have your voice heard. And those of you whose questions have already been heard, take a break next week. That way the others who have not had their questions answered get a chance. Thank you very much, Abhijit. Namaskar, and see you soon. Vel Vel Vetri Vel.
Vel Vel Vetri Vel. Thank you for having me on.